Welcome back, everyone. I am David Heineman of Stay Safe Martial Arts, and for today's fight breakdown, we actually have a video of myself. Now, this was during the ECQC course from Shivworks that I did, I don't know, a few months ago, and this was one of the evolutions, and honestly, this was my favorite of the 3 evolutions that we did on that specific day. Now, the premise of this evolution and the reason why I enjoyed this one so much was just how off the cuff it was. Craig really left it up to us as the participants to determine how this would unfold. And the premise was that the idea is that I have a firearm tucked in. So the premise of this one was I have to deal with a situation and decide whether or not I need to even deploy my firearm. And then if I do decide to deploy my firearm, I have to successfully deploy it or successfully draw it, deploy it, so on and so forth, right? It's going to start as a 1v1 type situation. The aggressor is just going to come up and start talking to you about whatever they want. They can be passive, they can be aggressive, they can be rude, doesn't matter. I am just supposed to kind of react accordingly, and if things decide to pick up a little bit, then obviously I still need to adjust. Now, there is a second person or a third person that could come into play as the second aggressor if Craig feels that they need to be introduced. For instance, maybe we're just kind of dragging this on a little bit, nothing's happening, they'll throw in the third person to kind of stir things up a little bit. In my specific evolution, as you're going to see, it's stuck with just me against one other person the entire time. Now, I'm going to start kind of playing this. Not too much is going on here, but I want to give you a little bit of just kind of like a background because it is a little bit hard to hear. Essentially, my partner decides to come up and start chatting to me about my Tesla that I had parked next to me. He essentially painted the image that I'm in not such a great area with a nice car. So he's coming up and essentially he's trying to commit a soft robbery, meaning he's trying to kind of feel me out a little bit, get an idea for what kind of money I have, if I have any valuables on me. Obviously, he sees a nice car in what is deemed a unsafe place. And essentially, like I'm saying, he's just feeling me out. Now, I knew what he was doing. I knew that this was essentially a soft robbery. I did not feel the need to hit him or anything. I was simply just trying to kind of talk my way out of it. You can notice that throughout this entire conversation, I'm doing a nice job of keeping my distance. I'm keeping my space between them. We have at least like 4 to 5 feet at all times. And as he's trying to cut angles or close the distance, I'm constantly adjusting accordingly. Now, one thing, and I'll pause it here, one thing that Craig mentioned to me at the end is instead of getting physical, which we're about to hear shortly, if I have a feeling and I understand that, hey, this is a soft robbery, I know exactly what this guy's trying to do to me, and I am carrying a firearm, Craig mentioned that you could do something as simply as lift up your garment, expose the fact that you are carrying a firearm, and pretty much just say, back the fuck off, and just kind of put it out there of like, look, man, I'm not trying to start or have any problems, but I'm also not one that's going to sit back and let you just walk all over me. So if you want to have problems, we're going to have problems. Otherwise, I suggest you carry on, find somebody else, and leave me alone. And essentially, that would be the message that I'm sending to them. I didn't do that, but it was a very good piece of advice that Craig has said he's used numerous times in the past, as have others, and it's worked out pretty well for them. Now, I don't do that, and as things start to progress, he starts closing the distance more and more, and I understand that things are probably going to get physical. He's getting frustrated with the fact that I'm not really giving into anything that he's asking. I'm not giving up my valuables. I'm not giving up my car keys, and I'm just continuously shutting him down. Now, as you can see here, as we get closer to it being physical, he's really not allowing me to create any more space. He's essentially backed me up into an invisible wall, which is the people surrounding us. And as you're going to see here, he's immediately going to now start closing the distance. Now, before he starts throwing this first punch, I want you to understand and pay attention to this critical factor right here. My hands have been up this entire time. Now, are they up at my face here, ready to go? Are they in fists? No, but my hands are here, which means my ability to go from here to here takes a fraction of a second. So when he does decide to throw this sucker punch here in a moment, you'll see that I'm able to quickly kind of shield and block the punch and immediately kick it in action. Too often do I see people when they are in verbal altercations like this, that their hands are down, their hands are in the pocket, their hands are crossed, and essentially they're just not positioning themselves in a manner that is good for them if things turn physical. And in most cases, when we see those types of videos, those dudes get knocked out pretty damn quickly. So as we continue watching here, you're going to see he throws a big haymaker. Now, I didn't shield my head. You'll kind of see that I shoot this arm forward. It's a little bit of like the spear system from Tony Blauer. So if you're familiar with that system, if not, look it up. But he has this whole premise of like the spear system, because it's our normal instincts to kind of like shoot our hands out like that. So you can see that I've got this spear motion going, which does block It blocks his big wide haymaker that he was throwing, and honestly, even if I had shield in my head here, I still wouldn't have really taking much of an impact. The other thing that I'm doing, which you can clearly see with my feet here, is I'm closing the distance. I'm not sitting still and taking the punch. I'm blocking it, absorbing the impact, and closing the distance as quickly as possible to, again, not take the blunt of the fist, but also to immediately get on the offensive now. Because, again, if we find ourselves in a fight and somebody throws a first strike, that's their turn. I want all the turns after that. I don't want to give them any opportunity to really fight back. So as you'll see here, I immediately start tying up with him a little bit. I've got a nice collar tie. I start trying to pull his head down. Now at this point, as you're going to see, we start kind of just fighting for a little bit before I even attempt to draw my firearm. I'll be honest with you, I did not feel the need to draw my firearm at all during this entire encounter, simply for the fact that I was confident in my ability to strike and grapple. I did not really feel threatened at all from a fighting perspective. I felt like I was in control the entire time. I was landing good strikes. I was defending and blocking the strikes. I was maintaining control of the clinch at all times. So I didn't feel the need to actually draw my firearm. And I want to say this because a lot of people purchase firearms, slap it on their waist, and think that that's going to be the answer to everything. If you can't fight and you have no experience when it comes to violence, right, you're going to resort to that firearm in situations where you may not have to. And if you don't understand how to fight or you don't understand violence, you're going to resort to violence as your only option. Whereas if you understand violence and you're good at it, then you get to choose when and how you want to utilize it. So again, in this instance, as you'll see, I simply just want to throw some strikes for a little bit. So we're going to throw some punches. I'm able to kind of fight off his grips a little bit. I've got inside control here. I've got inside control here. So I'm doing a nice job of blocking and breaking his grips. I'm not allowing him to get any sort of control on my shoulders, especially not on my head. I'm moving backwards, which isn't the best option. You will see that I start trying to cut angles here a little bit. This was actually a really nice block here as he started to throw a strike in. You'll notice right here that I kind of shield my head a little bit. Again, I didn't need to go with a full shield at this point because, as you can't see, my other hand over here is still kind of clearing his arm. So I'm still blocking. I'm still clearing his arm. I'm still dominating the inside space, which is good, right? And now at this point, I start kind of getting some space. I threw a nice cross. Again, people, we don't need crazy striking skills. Something as simple as this cross, right? So you'll see I kind of post on his head a little bit, right? This good frame post on his head. And then as we slowly go forward, I'm going to throw a good hard cross, come right over the top of his outside arm here. As you can see, my fist is right here. So as I come just on the over part of that arm, I throw a nice cross, which creates a decent amount of space, get him to move back a little bit. And then at this point, I'm going to continue kind of shoving him. Now you can see that I'm starting to kind of work these angles a little bit. And as you can see from his body positioning here, he has to constantly be adjusting. Now, people, we don't need fancy strikes. Simple jab crosses, hard hits, maybe some kicks here and there. We weren't allowed to kick in this scenario. Otherwise, I absolutely would have been throwing some teep kicks. But as you can see, I'm cutting the angles and I'm using basic strikes, right? Nothing fancy at this point. Now you'll see I start to get a good amount of space. I'm gonna let this play out. In my opinion, yep, throw a few more strikes. Now, right here is probably the most space that we've had during this entire physical encounter. I would guess that we are probably 5 feet, maybe a little bit less, right? One arm is still posted out. You'll see that my right arm here is tucked, and if we go slow motion, you're going to start seeing that high-pitched elbow right here, which means I'm going for a draw. Now, in my opinion, when I was in that situation, in this mindset, I thought I had more space than I actually did, so I thought I had enough time to safely draw this firearm. I don't, and for people that assume that they can in this close of a situation, you better be able to fight, because not only did I struggle to get the draw, but as you'll see here, he gets on me in a heartbeat, and the moment I have the firearm out here, he's immediately hands-on. I did manage to get one shot onto his thigh, but he continues to press on. Again, we're using sim rounds. They still suck. They hurt, but he was still able to press on, which again is very realistic. You may put some rounds in somebody, but if they're really determined to get after you, they're going to continue pushing forward. So now he's hands-on with me, and this is where you'll hear that saying, you better know how to fight, otherwise you're just going to be a holster for somebody else. Had I not had the fighting experience that I've had, he had a very solid grip on this firearm, and as you'll see, we're going to start kind of fighting over this a little bit. You can see all of our hands, like we've got 4 hands on this gun. We are completely fighting over this gun, which means that if you don't know how to break those grips, if you don't know how to physically fight within the clinch, you are essentially giving your aggressor a firearm to use, because if you can't hold on to it and they get their hands on it, what do you think they're going to do, right? So we're going to fight over this gun for a little bit. You'll see that I've got a good grip still here. Essentially what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm trying to use my backhand to start kind of prying him back a little bit and get him to posture up, because as you can see, he's got some decent inside head pressure, and if I allow him to maintain that head pressure, I'm going to completely lose control of the situation. So I'm trying to pull him back with my backhand a little bit. We're going to continue kind of working around. I'm trying now, as you can see, I've tucked my elbow to my side. Essentially what I'm trying to do is keep my arm locked to my body. I'm not allowing him to stretch my arm away from me, because the farther my arm gets away from me, the weaker my grips are going to be. So I'm trying to keep everything as tight as I possibly can to my body. I realize that I'm not able to get this gun free at any point, so I decided to improvise a little bit. And as you'll see here now, let's backtrack here just a brief bit. You'll see that I now get my second hand involved. I essentially tuck the gun to my side. I'm grabbing his wrist, and essentially what I'm doing is as I pry down on his wrist, I'm also prying up on the gun a little bit just to, again, break those grips. Understand how to grip fight, people. You are going to need it in any type of physical encounter, which is why in my classes, we drill grip fighting before every single class starts. Just a crucial skill that we all need to have. But I get creative here, and as you'll see as we start kind of going forward, I use this hand to start kind of posting and pushing back on him, start creating that space. I'm not really in the spot that I want to fire this gun necessarily right away, because everything's kind of scrambled. I'm not exactly sure where the muzzle's pointed at, so I need to at least get some idea of where we're positioned, which means I need to create a little bit of space. So as you'll see here, I'm now going to start using the firearm as a bludgeon weapon. And as you just saw here, I'll backtrack it in case you missed it. I'm actually going to take the top of the gun here, and essentially what I'm doing, I grab my fake one here, right? I'm literally grabbing the gun and I start kind of just bashing him in the face with the slide of the gun. I start hitting him on the side, I start uppercutting him a little bit, and essentially what I'm doing is trying to do enough damage, because I know even as a sim gun, it's going to hurt getting hit in the head. Even with our helmets on, it's going to hurt a lot more than if I were using a fist. And if we didn't have those helmets on, this is going to crack open your skull like no other, which again, we're already fighting over a gun. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get you off of me. So not only do I throw a couple of those strikes with the gun, throw a nice uppercut there. The moment he lets go of my grip, look, I've got both hands on. I've got good position. My target is on sight. I'm aimed directly at his chest, and I don't just stand there, right? I immediately start kind of creating that distance. I start cutting the angle, and as you'll see here, he has to start chasing me, right? I was initially positioned here. I switched over here. He now has to kind of turn and face me this way, which at that point, I've already now created that angle, and I'm in a perfect position to land a few shots. Now, again, I didn't necessarily just want to fire. If I didn't have to, I'm trying to practice. Yes, we could easily do that. We could have easily ended this situation right at the get-go, but I'm trying to embrace as much as I possibly can in these trainings, because that's the purpose of us doing these trainings. And so I decide not to fire a few shots. I decide to create that distance, keep my gun on sight, or keep my targets on sight. I continue to work and create more and more space. And essentially in my head, I have drawn myself an invisible line, meaning that if he decides to cross or even approach this line at all, I will immediately fire a few shots at center mass. But as you'll see here, we start going, and then Craig and Brian call it, and that is the end of the evolution. So in my opinion, this was the best one that we did this entire weekend. I know we did the car jiu-jitsu. I'll post that video here as well if you haven't seen that one already. But in my opinion, this was a very well put together evolution that encompasses way more than just a physical aspect. You have to learn how to talk. You have to learn how to read situations, because not everything is how it seems. You might think that the person is being aggressive, but that might just be how they are. And you have to truly understand that not every situation, even if they do turn physical, not every situation means that you have to draw your firearm. Not every verbal argument means that you have to draw your firearm. You have to learn how to judge the situations. And more importantly, you need to learn how to fight, because as I said at the beginning, if you have confidence in your physical capabilities of fighting, you're going to be a lot more confident in your ability to talk somebody down, and you're going to be less willing to resort to weapons of any kind, because you know that if things do get physical, I can throw punches, I can throw kicks, I know how to grapple a bit, and I'm confident. And then if during that actual physical portion, if I start feeling like, hey, I'm losing control, then I need to start creating space and draw my weapons as quickly as possible. But nonetheless, if you're one that carries a firearm or even a knife, I highly recommend you take either the EWO course or the ECQC course from Shivworks. I've taken both of them. They are phenomenal courses. If you're in the area, I'm bringing them out to Stay Safe HQ in 2025 at the beginning of the year. We're going to be doing their EWO course, their Edge Weapons Overview course. So if you're in the area, hit me up and come and train with us. I'd love to meet all of you. But more importantly, I think it's a great opportunity for people to train and just learn how to better protect themselves. But let me know your thoughts on this video. Let me know how you would have handled this situation down in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. And as always, stay safe.